No problem. That's fine. That's fine.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. To the at Kennesaw University. You are known more for your interventions in our own national political discourses. So thank you very much once again for being willing to give us some of your time.
It's my pleasure.
I'll go straight to the town, very straight. And then the first question I will actually ask you is, looking at what is happening now, do you think it is forward to 2023, forward to 1979, that is forward to the past, or even forward to 1960s, 1964, all those alliances between NCNC and NEPU and the rest of them? What is the state of play? Because it's a little confusing for so many people. And what do you think will be the major difference between now and 2023, having said it all?
Well, this is a very good question that invites introspection. I would say in the immediate
Yeah,
run, it seems to me that 2027 is going to be a replay of 2023. In many ways,
it's going to be a replay of 2023.
yes, election, because it's it initially looked
Okay.
like the opposition was going to be united in one political party to
Yeah,
confront
yeah,
the people in power, the APC government.
yeah,
But they have
yeah,
splintered, and within those splinters, there are also splinters.
yeah,
So I, in the previous republics, for you political scientists have studied, political parties formations and the character of
mm,
political party formations. And the
yeah,
1960s, we had political parties that were rooted in regions and ethnic groups. We also had
yeah,
parties that were ideological. We would say, for instance, the NEPU was very ideological. It was animated by
yeah,
opposition to the suffocating monarchy of in the north, particularly in Kano. It's
yeah,
reincarnated.
yeah,
NEPU reincarnated as PRP in the Second Republic.
PRP. Yeah,
And it was the party to which even people like Chino Achebe belonged. He didn't belong
yeah,
to the the dominant party in the southeast. He belonged to the PRP.
yeah,
And if I'm not mistaken, Wole Soyinka also sort of had sympathy for the PRP because he was
yeah,
ideologically related. But subsequently, we have not had any political party that anyone can say is rooted in any identifiable, recognizable ideology. The
okay,
return of democratic rule in 1999 saw military and political parties that were shaped by the military, and PDP and AM, APP. I think it was APP and AD were political parties that were centered around personalities. The AG at the time was
yeah,
basically Southwest political party, and PDP was supposed to be national. And
yeah,
AMPP later became a northern party, although its first presidential candidate was a Yoruba man, which was a consequence of the consensus of northern political establishment that power should rotate back to the Southwest in view of the resentment that the annulment of June 12 election activated. But what we
yeah,
have seen this past something is just, I think, this new expression that has been invented, a special purpose vehicle for election. That's what political parties have become. So people hop in and out of political
yeah,
parties without any regard to what they stand for.
yeah,
And for me,
yeah,
all the aspirants are politically indistinguishable. So I
yeah,
see more a play of 2023 than a replay of the previous cycles of elections in our politics, but I'm open to disagreement.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you, yes, I see where you're going. Like if you look at it in terms of a tripod,
Yes.
given what you've written extensively on, the character of the groupings we have and identity politics defined mostly by religion in the north, ethnicity in the south.
Yes.
Yes, you can say in 2023 seem to be that tripodal system will be the Igbo one, the Tinubu Yoruba, the Atiku representing the north to make it the Hausa Fulani.
Yes.
But then there's also a fundamental difference on people will say. In 2023, there was this sentiment to religion, and you can say the Christians, those people they call minorities in the north,
Yes.
then they had strong identification to, but that wouldn't seem to be the same pattern now. Things have changed.
That's true.
And then you also see Kwakwanso now regarded as what will I see those will be one of the I don't know very establishment kind of politicians in the north,
Yes.
and now teaming up with Peter. So people think it's this may create a new form of story. Tinubu, the Muslim ticket, many people feel has not really the fears of the northern minorities seem to have been assuaged by Tinubu's strategy, which
Yes.
means that the kind of attraction they had to be in 2023 might not be replicated.
That's true.
At the same time, people are talking of anger in the north
Yes.
against Tinubu. If you juxtapose it to the fact that it has also messianic politics, savior politics is also facing a lot of crisis, especially from Buhari, who many people, had so much expectation and they crashed those expectations. And then you look at the system of alliances now, people would say, oh, even the new ones that are going to rescue Nigeria, they couldn't even also organize their primaries. So if you are a typical Nigerian voter, so
Yes.
where do you go? You say, work. This opposition, they cannot, excite me. So where do they go?
Honestly,
If
I
you
think
were a typical Nigerian voter, where would you go? What will you do?
yeah, I think
Savior
you
politics is in crisis.
I think you have brilliantly captured the quandary, the anxieties of the voters. In a very folksy way. And that's the problem. I wrote an article some time ago where I said, for me, the primary means to attract my emotional affiliation to any party is their position on subsidies. And what do I mean by that?
Okay.
Politics, all politicians are essentially the same.
Mhm.
And what they say before they get to power is always radically different
Okay.
from what they do when they get to power.
Mhm.
And to be fair, it's not just in Nigeria, it's all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's why this New York politician famously say we campaign in poetry,
Yeah. Yeah.
govern in prose. Prose here meaning
And ruling pros.
exactly we rule in
Mario
prose.
Kumo.
Yeah, so that's but
Yeah.
but the position everyone here, before Tinubu took over power, and even before, I mean, when Buhari was in power, have been very consistent
Yeah.
in insisting that subsidies are central to the sustenance of a poor country like Nigeria. That in fact, in the United States, as the most
Yeah.
prosperous nation in the world, subsidies exist at all levels, and I've talked about what I benefit from in subsidies. Petrol subsidies. Right now, our state government is subsidizing petrol consumption because of the unnaturally high increase in the price of petrol. And the Trump administration is also
Mhm.
in thinking of having a federal subsidy to reduce the price of gas because they know midterm elections are coming. When any political party in power that supervises an increase in
Mhm.
petrol prices always loses. presidential election, midterm elections, and they want to avoid that. But we have a country, Nigeria, where that is very petrol dependent, where all the major political players have sort of agreed that subsidies should be gone, and we are all living with the consequences of these subsidies, the withdrawal of the subsidies. But no one seems to be having any sustained conversation about this. Who is going to bring back subsidies? Because what they have succeeded, what is all this is to demonize the word subsidy, so that anyone who says bring back subsidies is seen as retrogressive, that you want to go back to the past. But what has been happening is that the subsidies exist for the elite. And what has happened in the last 3 years is a very bold, unexampled reverse Robin Hoodism. And what do I mean by that? Robin Hood, everyone knows Robin Hood, took from the rich to give to the poor.
Yeah.
But what has happened is a bold-faced, in-your-face, audacious reverse Robin Hoodism that is stealing from the poor to give to the rich. These subsidies withdrawal have only enriched the governors. And the presidency comes out all the time to say, look at one of the advantages of the subsidies, of the withdrawal of subsidies, that governors now have more money. And I thought that was shameless for anyone to say. If governors have more money, what are they doing with the money? They are not doing anything extraordinary. There are still states that don't pay the minimum wage, yet petrol prices have gone up. The value of Naira has dropped precipitously. People are screaming in existential torment, and no one is talking about it. This is not even part of the conversation. So for me, anyone who says, look, what we did was wrong. We cannot take subsidies away from people just because it's really with corruption. Instead of tackling the corruption in the subsidy administration, don't remove it, because I've seen the consequences.
Sanitizing the corruption in that.
Sir, I'm listening.
But Prof, yeah, this is really an area where, Prof, this is an area I think where we think alike. I actually wrote a paper on that, and then some TV interviews. I argued, if you look at the U.S. farm gate policy,
Yes.
so high. If you go to the Europe, the common agricultural policy takes about 60% of the budget. I
That's right.
challenge them because this is neoliberal economics.
Hmm.
Point out one country that has developed
Yes.
through this process of neoliberal economics.
Exactly.
It's not, you make an argument, you remove subsidy, they have more money in nominal terms. So
Yes.
how much is it in real terms?
That's right.
So it's not even that those, when they came with that argument that is only the elite,
Yes.
it became like motor park economics.
Hmm.
Everybody is suffering, no matter how much your salary now.
That's true.
Transport consumes all of that.
Yeah.
So, but the irony for me, it's not just now about only subsidy. It is about the whole philosophy of government they have.
That's right.
And that's why some people are very confused, people like me, because you are right, all the main actors, we are now being intimidated. Nobody now can come out to say, look, this is not right, because they say you are taking them back to Egypt,
Exactly.
as if, you demonize them. But
Yeah.
then, where do we go? Despite the fact that people are angry, people are still decamping to APC because you don't see where to go anymore.
Yeah.
So the consequence is that people don't care. If you give them money, there is a kind of disillusionment. So what
And I
will be
think,
your argument? Where would
and
you think the government is doing something right? Because even when I go to TV, I told them I don't see it as a reform.
yeah,
Whatever he's doing was exactly what Babangida did in his SAP. So
exactly.
why you may present this thing as something novel?
Yeah.
But my
That's
challenge is that who do you now bank on to do something different?
that's a problem.
Every day,
No one,
everybody seems to now swallow that that is the only. Everybody says, look,
yeah,
there's no alternative. Without this, we will have died.
yeah,
So what
which is
will
a
be?
lie.
Where will you now on the basis of this? Because yes, I'm being biased in this because I did my own PhD on IMF, and I know that IMF World Bank's structural adjustment program, and they pumped so much money in Ghana to make one success story, which did not happen. So
Yes.
voices like you, people like you who are celebrity columnists, I think we should be able now to it's not enough, in my own opinion, to tell the government give palliatives. I think it is time, maybe, why we at the elite level are talking about changing the philosophy of government, the brand of economics we are embracing. Where do we what do we tell people into the road to 2027? Maybe you that you are aware of, you are not on the ground, we are here. You are probably have a better bird's eye view. What will you advise people to do? Which are the areas you'll think the government is doing well that will encourage them before we come to the other regional politics? And what
Okay.
will be the advice to Tinubu if it's something? I mean, what is a government? How will you advise him? Now they've appointed you as your advisor. In fact, somebody told me you came to Nigeria because they are sounding you out.
No,
That's
no,
on a
no, no.
lighter note.
I came to Nigeria for research. I'm researching the manifestations of digital capitalism in Africa. Nigeria is one of the
Okay.
countries we're exploring.
Okay.
So
So
uh,
which areas do you think the government is doing well, the Tinubu government, and where do you encourage them, and what do you think you should advise them?
well, if there's any, I have been called pessimistic, disabling pessimistic, and having an incapacity to appreciate good. So, and I have always struggled to really contend with that. So I would say when I looked at the entire the policy the policies, the programs, and the politics of this government, of the Tinubu administration, I looked at what is it that he has done well that he should sustain. And I realized that probably the only thing for me that he has done well is the nail fund, this uh, financial aid to students to pay their tuition and all of that. My inquiries show that a lot of people, even when they have no connection to anyone in power, can get it. So that access to the
Okay.
fund, I think, yeah, I think it's a good thing. However, I think it's undermined by all these other policies
Okay.
that caused people to writhe in agony, in penury. And one of the things that I have noticed in Nigeria is that a lot of my friends who are doing well, who are comfortable in their middle class status, who are very self-reliant, who are proud, who would never ask for anything from anyone, who would treat me to lunches or dinners when I visit Nigeria, are suddenly so economically down that some of them are even asking me for money. I recall sometime last year, someone
Mm.
who was so comfortable, who was so proud, so well situated, that when he asked for money from me, I wasn't even, I was somewhere where I was not in a position to send the money. But because of the depth of respect I have for this guy, I had to call my wife immediately and say, please send money to so and so account. That was the because I knew something had to be wrong. This guy, for him to ask, and I verified that this was not some scam call, at the time.
Mm.
People hadn't AI hadn't come with that could fake someone's voice, but it was actually real. And after someone I said, what's happening? He said, look, this subsidy withdrawal and the after effect of it have so reduced me to the bottom that I don't even know where to go. And I know a medical doctor, friend of mine, who is so patriotic about Nigeria that he resisted every opportunity he had to leave Nigeria. He's a very well-trained doctor. Last year he left. And when I heard that he left, I reached out to him and I said, what happened? I thought he was so patriotic that he said, Farouk, it has gotten to the point where I can no longer stay in Nigeria. So any reform that reduces people to this extent is not worthy of that name. And like you said, you are the expert in this, so you know more about this than I do. But I also took minors in political economy, and I've studied economics, the economies of countries. There's not a single example of a country on earth, and I have challenged people in government and all neoliberal apologies that has developed on the basis of these World Bank IMF conditionalities.
None. None.
This so-called reform was imposed on the Tinubu administration by the World Bank, and it's all for their own interests. So we've been told that these are temporary pains for a future deferred permanent gain. And I've told them I came of age during IBB's time. All
Yeah.
these things, in fact, the rhetoric, the vocabularies, the justifications, the alibis for these so-called economic reforms were the same thing that were used by IBB at the time I came of age. And we waited for years and years and years and were
It
told
didn't
that,
come.
oh, things were going to, nothing happened. The country got worse.
Nothing happened.
Now, people are
It just
writing
destroyed the entire middle class.
it destroyed the entire middle class, and that's exactly what is happening now. And I study South America, I have friends from South America, and I know also that their economies were destroyed irretrievably, irrecoverably because of these policies. Argentina, where they have a madman called, I forget his name now, who is like a neoliberal whore, who is he's that's the only place that is probably worse than Nigeria. People literally eat from the dustbins in Argentina because of these so-called policies, reducing the worth of their national currency, transport subsidies that used to exist, all gone. And the United States, where this world, and Europe, where these bodies are located, don't implement these policies. I live here. One of the reasons I live here is because it's a country, and Europe, you studied in Europe, and it's something they take their contract, the social contract, very seriously. That for surrendering
Very
our
seriously.
sovereignty, personal liberties to people in government, in exchange, we get something, which is basic economic liberties. But when you live in a country where there's no basic economic liberty, where what used to sustain people is taken away from them, and they are told to just be patient, just keep dying. But there's a time is going to come when everything will be all right.
Mm.
But people are already dying. What use is such
In the long
deferred?
run, in the long run, we're all dead, said one
We are all
economist.
dead. Yeah. So for me, any political party that hasn't talked about subsidies and the administration of subsidies is not worth considering,
Yeah.
because
But
what
for me,
exists right now, the subsidies exist for the elites. Governors are richer now. They're 3 times richer now than they have ever been, with the same responsibilities. They're not
yeah,
building more
that's
roads.
some of the challenges maybe. Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
listening.
Prof. One of the things we have to look at now is the whole idea of nation building.
Yes,
Because if you look at, I'm not sure now under Babangida I could say it was an imposition. Given the fact that IBB had some kind of intellectual orientation and liked to surround himself with intellectuals.
yes,
If you look at the key political actors in this dispensation, they seem to be people who are who really embraced willy-nilly this brand of economics. It was an election we saw, William Vance, and these are capitalists that are running it. There's nothing wrong with capitalism. But even, I lived in Denmark for years where capitalism has become humanized.
yes, sir.
Even if you're a capitalist, let's judge them in other parameters, say nation building,
Mm.
compassion, and other things. What do you make of our nation? There's a lot of pessimism now. What do you think of the Tinubu's strategies of governing the country, and what do you think of the state of the opposition? What can we make out from the opposition and the nation building process in terms of the government in power? People say it's become too much Eurobanized, and we don't know what happens with the opposition when they get in there. Buhari, this Tinubu was such a cosmopolitan man as a governor, having people from different ethnic groups in his government as
Yeah,
a state governor. Nobody will never have imagined that it's going to come to this. So how
yeah,
are we going to trust the other people?
yeah. I talked about the
So
concept of ethnocracy, which seems to be the guiding philosophy of governance in Nigeria and frankly most of Africa. And when you look at what Tinubu said in Abeokuta, his 2022 speech, where he said Emilokon, that people now, before he said Emilokon, he said Yoruba Lokon. That is, it is the time of Yoruba people. And in this time of Yoruba people, now it's my time. So people forget what preceded Emilokon. And he's living it. And so and I've called that ethnocracy, which is the government, supported, sustained, and enhanced by allegiances to ethnic groups. That the major appointments, in the administration to Yoruba people, not just Yoruba people, Lagos-centered Yoruba people. And I have pointed out many articles, and a lot of people agree that Tinubu is basically ruling as if he were the governor of Lagos. He's not really like the president of Nigeria. He's like the governor of Lagos. And to be fair to him, Yaradua was the same thing. Yaradua, in fact, his cabinet, it was his commissioner for finance became the core, the so-called cabal. That word cabal started from Yaradua's administration. He was basically a Katsina government, but although he was located in Abuja, the federal capital. Buhari came, he wasn't any different. The only truly national administration we've had to a large extent is Obasanjo. If you look at his kitchen cabinet, it was pan-Nigerian. He had other faults, quite okay, but after Obasanjo, most administrations we've had have been very provincial, have been very ethnically based, and that's the reality of Nigeria. And I don't think that the opposition taking over will change it. So at the core of the problems of Nigeria is that we have Nigeria, but we don't have Nigerians. We haven't evolved to the point of forming what you political scientists call a nation. We are still a state, but we haven't evolved into a
Prof,
nation.
you're borrowing from the title of my book, Nigeria
Okay.
Without Nigerians.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So, and I think that's a major that's a major problem. Although there's a book chapter I contributed where I said that it appears that there's a glimpse of hope in the Gen Z, the generation that is coming, that's particularly the urban generation. I've seen young people who don't have any allegiances to their ethnic group because of how they grew up. We have generated a core of common national symbols, common national memory in our music, in our language. And there's something I've observed that Pidgin English is emerging as the linguistic glue that's bringing together so many ethnic groups, particularly in the South and the central states. So yeah, Nigeria is evolving in ways that the previous generation didn't have. But whether that is going to be sustained, I don't know. But for right now, we are living in the present. I don't see any political party or any politician emerging as president and changing the structure of governance that is moving away from ethnocracy into true.
Is that not very scary? Because is that not very scary if you think that some people say that Buhari came with his own agenda and this man took it, maxed it, and took it to a high level. And
Yeah,
then if that continues, then we are finished.
that's true.
Because what we are hoping, my own personal belief is that until we build a nation, any solution thrown to any of the myriad of problems we have will become part of the problem.
I agree.
Because unless people agree on the basis parameters for being together, any other problem you throw will become any solution you throw will become part of the problem. So is that not leading us to pessimism?
Yes.
How do you think we can construct a nation? That's what now the challenge, given this scenario you have painted.
Yeah.
How do you think we can construct a nation? One, how do you think, what would you think will be the drivers as we race towards 2027 election?
Well, so for me,
What do you think will be the key drivers? Because the issue of nation building doesn't seem to be figuring too much on the top
yes,
of the agenda, whereas in my own opinion, In that Nigeria Without Nigerians, which I actually wrote in 2012, after I presented a speech in South Africa on the Boko Harams, it does seem to me that people don't believe it's the major problem. People are talking about corruption and blah, 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 which I regard as the main symptoms of the problems. So, two questions. Remember, this is a conversation, not really question and answer. Where do you think? What do you think will be the key drivers? How do we bring nation building to the top of the agenda? Is there any way we can get the citizens from below to challenge these politicians, and be able to bring something different from what we are seeing now?
Yeah, so, one of the proposals that I put forward to sustaining nation building was what I call the constitutionalization of power sharing between and within regions. Unfortunately, it was defeated. I think someone sponsored that bill. Feelings of exclusion activate resentment, and resentment creates distance, emotional distance from the nation. I have been known to advocate from 2022 the transfer of power to the Southeast. And I say this not out of political correctness, but out of a feeling of inclusion. When a huge portion of the nation is excluded in what seems like a systematic way from access to symbolic resources at the center, it creates resentment. And when you have resentment that coalesce, in a region, it leads to feelings of exclusion and then emotional distance from the nation. When people are emotionally distant from the nation, you can't get them to do anything. You can't encourage them to do anything. So, but as a nation, there's a beauty in Nigeria that a lot of us who live outside of it cherish and share. Which is that we are a nation of a lot of talents. We are a nation that, when you hear an African doing well outside of Africa, in most cases he's in Nigeria, and outside of Nigeria, we actually relate well with each other. And a few days ago, a few months ago, I'm going to give an example, a personal example. Someone reached out to me whom I had never known, and he's from Enugu State. He said his son, who had never been to Nigeria, who was getting admitted into my university, and he wanted me to be his guardian. This guy had never met me. He reached me, but we had never met. So we chose the day that he came. We took photos, but before we met, he said, "How am I going to tell?" Because he wants to tell this young man that I'm his uncle, so that he will come to me, get guidance and all of that. He said, "Well, how do we go about it? What if he asks questions?" And I said, "Well, my wife is from Anambra." I said, "Enugu and Anambra used to be in the same state. So there's a chance that maybe there's a chance that they are related. That you and my wife are related because she's from Anambra and Enugu and Anambra." He said, that's a great idea." So I said, "Well, what do we say?" He said, "That's your uncle by marriage." And he comes to me. I invited him how many months ago here with my wife, and the man himself lives in Australia. And he used to live in the United States for a long time, had a son, and he's very connected to the son. But I'm giving this example to show, look at within Nigeria, we'll be caught up in our differences, but outside of it, he trusts me enough, although he hadn't met me, to present me to his son as uncle. And we're thinking of how do we justify it in case the guy asks questions, because he's lived in America, he had never gone to Nigeria. And we did it. And he sees me as his uncle. He introduces me to his friends. That's my uncle. He comes here. So outside of Nigeria, we relate well. We see the beauty in our nation, in our peoplehood, but within it, we create conditions for resentment. And for me, to build a nation, you have to create the basis for everyone to feel a sense of belonging. And I came up with the concept of a symbolic conduit. When I say someone,
Yeah.
if someone from Southern Kaduna is made say president or is secretary of state, it serves as a symbolic conduit for people even in Southern Borno who are Christians to feel connected to the
Mm,
government.
mm,
That's the politics of emotional
yeah.
affiliation I've been talking about. So when you have a government that is sensitive to these emotional maps in the country and shows
Yeah.
sensitivity to these maps, it gives everyone a symbolic conduit to relate to that government. And when people feel that the government belongs to them, that they are a part of it, that they can dream to be anything. And that's what has happened to Black America in the
Yeah.
United States. Obama's emergence as president, from the get-go, I say it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change the fortunes of Black America. But before
Mm,
then, no one could even dream. If you were Black, you couldn't even dream that you could be president. That was not part of, that was not in the realm of possibility. But his emergence has now created a basis for people to dream, even if that dream is not realistic, but at least it's in the realm of possibility. So
yes.
create the
Possibility. Yeah.
emotional basis for people to relate to the government, to feel that. So you don't have to give appointment to every single person. That's not possible.
Yeah.
But someone from Enugu, if you give him an appointment, even the Igbo man in the Delta feels connected to that something, you know. So, and if we don't
Prof, I want to
constitutionalize
add
it,
something to this thing.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, go ahead.
So I want to add something to it because I read to you. I mean, you used that. I think in one of your writings you were using the term. I don't know whether it was you or my friend Abdul Hussein who was talking about emotional geography. But
Yeah, it was
one of
me.
the things, yeah,
Yeah,
that I was also very concerned about is
yeah,
the extent to which our democracy, I'm sure, wrote about it in how actually democracy, the free speech guarantee in democracy can turn around to create a big unintended effect. For example, they say in transitional societies like us, emerging from autocracy, the free speech guarantees in liberal democracy will, in the short to medium term, aggravate the structures of conflict. So you see, the politicization of ethnicity, the weaponization, which should happen in the short to medium term, after which these things will stabilize. But in our own case, the danger is that it may end up, overloading the system because of these bottled up aggressions that are grievances that are being unloaded onto the system.
mm,
Now, I'm thinking a part of the solution. Wouldn't there be a way where we can make our politics? I mean, I see every time we do election, even in the US, it's like wars without
that's true.
weapon. The difference is in the
Yeah,
Western world, the system parameters of government, there's a unanimous agreement on even the basis of nationhood. In our own, we are still contesting basis
mm,
of statehood. So each time the election comes, we have not properly healed from the consequence, and then comes another round of election,
mm,
which for me seems therefore to aggravate more and widen the social distance among us Nigeria.
mm.
What do you think to be in a way in that terms of politics? Yeah, we cannot ask the military to come back because they were worse. We
Yes,
cannot say uh, one party system. We tried them before in some countries, it didn't work.
that's true.
Our multi-party democracy, is it really worth it? Do the votes matter? Why do we go through this ritual?
Yes.
Now, put your mind, where do you think you should? What kind of nature of democracy will you, what kind of system will you recommend that will not put us through this anguish
Yes.
of fighting one another? Because there are group dynamics in politics. So
Yes.
you mobilize all identities, including ethnicity, including
Exactly.
race,
Ex-
everywhere in the
yeah,
world.
yes.
How do we avoid this? Because I believe if we have a period of 10 years or so where we don't have to come back with vote for me, it's the turn of Yoruba and Igbo,
Yes.
probably the healing process will be easier. I don't know, maybe your thoughts on that.
Yeah, when I was at when I went to when I visited Nigeria recently, and I was invited by the Lagos State University's Political Science Department to give a lecture on the position. I actually talked about this, and I said that for democracy to be meaningful to our people, it has to evolve organically from our systems. And democracy works for the United States, although now that's been questioned, but it emerged organically from their socio-historical experiences. It wasn't imposed. And if you see the practice of democracy, like the electoral college system, they devised it. They realized that they have rural states and they have urban states. They realized that they have southern states and they have liberal states that are in the north. And all of these differences, so it's their way to resolve these differences that they say, okay, let's not elect our president directly so that everyone feels a sense of belonging. Smaller states can feel that they also contributed
States.
to the emergence of the president, all of that. It's not democratic. It's not a one person, one vote system like it is in other parts. So any democracy that is imposed, that is not organically developed, that didn't emerge from the actual social historical experience of the people, is bound to fail. And what we practice in Nigeria does not come from our culture, does not come from the conscious acceptance of the processes of electing leaders. What I have advocated is for a sober reflection on our cultures, because we have had leaders before. We have always had our ways of electing our leaders. They have so of course, I know Nigeria is large and heterogeneous in many ways, but we still need to come together and understand that these election cycles, they are very wasteful. Like you said,
Yeah,
they
what?
become vehicles for the weaponization of difference. We instrumentalize our differences to tear each other apart. And before we have a chance to heal from the wounds of elections, another one is upon us. And there's no transparency. That we are not even sure that the elections are real. They are true reflections of people's um, choices. And in the West, they can afford to do that because they somehow because elections, that's how they choose to elect their leaders. It wasn't always that way, but they evolved organically to that level. We need to study how we've always chosen our leaders. In my community, for instance, we have and I hate the idea of inherited authority. No one deserves to be leader just by mere fact of being born into a family. Everyone's blood is red. There's no blue blood. But within the limitations
Mine is
of
red or even iron.
yes, exactly. Within the limitations of our system, we will have a constituent assembly of people who are wise and old and have seen it, and they'll have an odd number. They are the ones who always come together, of course, because that was inherited authority from the family. It was a representative portion of the society where people got together. But that's very local, that's very provincial. That's not going to be a model for the nation. But I know in Ibadan, for instance, the oldest person becomes the Olubadan. In Igbo
Okay.
land, there's the Republican, there's a version that is different. Our responsibility as scholars, as nationalists, as patriots, is to come together and see the different methods of appointing leaders in different parts of the country and try and aggregate and say, okay, what can we take from each of these elements of leadership selection that we can now aggregate into a national framework for electing leaders? Maybe as an alternative to these wild cycles of election that come with violence, that come with
Yeah.
breakdown in trust. Because I mean, see, for instance, the what I, at least what I see online and actually offline between Igbos and Yoruba people, because of the election in 2023. That's unprecedented. Yet these are the ethnic groups that intermarry all the time. They get along well in real something, but because of politics, you find rhetoric around that is almost genocidal, and people think it's normal. It's you that a nation cannot continue that way. that the sharp striking edges of
No.
difference become the basis for negotiation, for election, for I mean, it creates a wedge that deepens and widens every election cycle. And if, as we agreed, Prof, earlier, that Nigeria's major problem is the lack of
Yeah.
a nation, we don't have a nation. To quote your book, we have a geographic space, it's called Nigeria, but the citizens that inhabit that geographic space don't see themselves as belonging to that space. Their allegiances and loyalties are usually
Yeah.
to a smaller group than it is to the larger something. What we have a system that widens this, that ensures that this keeps getting worse, which means we don't have a chance to even emerge as a successful nation. So I don't have an answer to say, hey, here is the alternative to elections. But my response is that we should study the various means of electing leaders in pre-colonial times. And
Oh,
and if you look at other nations, there are so many nations that
of
elect
course.
leaders not through this violent electoral process. So we could possibly do that ourselves.
Thank you, Prof. I know people read you a lot, and your column is quite. That's why I call you celebrity columnist.
No, I'm not.
Um, you're a celebrity columnist. People want to see Farouk. Berogi has said that, too, so they want to Nostradamus now. People want to, as some of us, honestly, I'm emotionally alienated from the system. I mean, what is happening nowadays. So, but people will still want, people are curious. How will you see the path to victory? You know, politicians are incurably optimistic.
Yes,
So assuming we have three main candidates now, you replay with some rejigging of 2023. What do
yes,
you think will be the path to victory for Tinubu? We hear they are normally, oh, he's no longer wanted in the north, but we see a lot of people still decamping to the APC there. Oh, these people are going to deal with him. Asari Dokubo them. I will deal with this and that. Is my friend. So,
yes,
so I think it's machine politics. I call it somewhere else. And the opposition, where do you think? Yeah, charismatic movements will be brought charisma. You know, what will be his path to victory? That is what their supporters will be looking at. What will be the path to victory of Atiku? Given the fact that okay, people will say he's a resilient politician. His critics will say, well, in the nation building, what he did this thing to PDP, he did this thing to ADC. These are just political talks.
yes.
Now you are contracted as a consultant by the three parties. Advise them on their path to victory, so that that will be what they will take away from our getting you to talk to us.
Okay, well,
Let's start with the APC.
okay.
What is Tinubu's path to big victory? What will be P2B NDC's path to victory? And what will be Atiku's path to victory? Others are coming up. We're not ruling out Donald Duke. I don't think
Sure.
Jonathan will run, but
Yeah,
sure, there are people like Sure are very important. And let me say this.
yeah,
There are people who just want to run to put issues on the agenda, even in the US, not because
yes,
they are necessarily going to win. You have Ross Perot and the rest of them in that time.
yes,
So people like Sure, there are people that are cut out. That
yeah.
was what Shoinka used to do in those days. Is
Mm,
probably what Showore now. Fearless. He doesn't care if you put him in jail. Yeah,
mm,
and it takes. He's there.
yeah,
But I'm talking about the people who want to be in power. We know
yeah.
that they want to win.
That's true. Well, what up for Tinubu, I mean, he already has the war chest, the financial war chest, and he has so pauperized the nation that giving throwing a little something to them, will be uh is a strategy. And some people who are um cynical even said the economic policies, the so-called reforms, are probably intentionally intended to make people so poor that they are vulnerable to manipulation, financial manipulation, financial inducement. And we've seen that, see the crowd that gathered was it yesterday in Kano, to celebrate his re-election campaign, the governor with his Tinubu cap. It was massive. And I don't know how they did it, but I won't be shocked if it turns out that they give them rice or 10,000 or 20,000 to come out. And is so a lot. And I have said, we like to emotionally blackmail poor people for collecting money from politicians to vote for them. I call it emotional blackmail because that comes from a position of privilege. A lot of these people are so poor that you give them money to vote and you insist that, well, bring your card, I give you 20,000, vote for this candidate. They haven't eaten in days. They haven't had meeting. You are telling me that they should reject that money for some candidate who promises to be different. And because of that, somehow they are responsible for their own political incineration or existential incineration. I see that as unfair because, for instance, they tested with Buhari. During Buhari's time, they actually gave money. Instead of collecting money for him to vote for him, they contributed money to him. There's the case of a Kebbi woman
Yeah.
who contributed more than 1 million naira. That was before this. The equivalent of that would be probably maybe, I don't know what, I don't want to say something outrageous, but a million naira in 2014 is certainly way more than 1 million naira right now. But that was her entire life savings. She donated it to
Yeah.
Buhari's camp. She died in penury. So, but what happened? While he was campaigning, he came across as a man of the people, a man for the people. And a lot of people contributed money, nothing
Mhm.
happened. So they're going to tell you that, look, the only time these politicians relate with us is when they're looking for our votes. And that's the only opportunity we have to get a little something from them. Uh, uh, Maybe there are other great candidates that we don't care. As far as it's concerned, the pressures of the moment are more important than the promises of tomorrow. So he has that advantage. He has money to throw around. And so I,
Yeah.
I honestly have been very wary of transitioning from saying there's massive discontent against Tinubu in the north, and therefore that's going to translate to voter apathy or vote against him. I really don't make that. I don't make that transition in all the appearances that I've had. When people say, "Do you think now that no, it's not going to vote for him?" I don't know. I frankly don't know, and I wouldn't be shocked if they still vote for him because they will be given money. So, but the way it stands now, the emotional maps of Nigeria don't favor a Tinubu win in the north, but I don't know how that is going to be. He's not going to win the southeast. Everyone knows that. Within southern minority, he probably would divide the vote with Obi, with Obi having a slight edge. That's again, that's my prognosis. It's not based on any oracular powers. Anything could change. And as you said earlier, and
So
I
you have
heard,
not looked at, there was no divine revelation to you,
no,
Prof.
no demand revelation.
Because Elijah Yodele, I don't know, because you have to now, if you want people to call you more, you have to mention that,
Yeah.
God told you, God told you.
Yeah, that's what
So
people.
you don't become like Elijah Yatole, who will forget what he said 2 days ago and say another thing today.
Yeah. So I'm
But
very careful
anyway,
about that because
what do you think? There must be like a
Obi,
roadmap, say
yeah.
for Atiku,
So okay, well, okay,
for
so
Atiku.
let's go to
Because if
Atiku.
you have if you are engaged as a political strategist,
Yeah.
yeah,
So for Atiku, I would say Atiku seems to have a grip on the north, particularly the Muslim north, and
okay,
he's
okay,
when you look at his history, his politics, his associations, he's the only major Muslim politician uh, in the north who also has acceptance amongst Christians. It's very rare, but somehow he was able to do it because, in fact, if you know, in a Muslim north, he's looked at with a lot of suspicion. His opposition to Sharia in
yeah,
1999, and he's addressing or asking his press secretary to say that he shouldn't be addressed as Alhaji, but just vice president as a title. That also didn't sit well. And then when you look at his associations, most of the people who are around him, he's visibly very comfortable in the midst of Christians and Southerners, and in ways that no other northern politician of that stature is. And he really gets along. But you also have to realize that the statement he issued after Deborah was murdered, and then retracted it after backlash, sort of caused his supporters in the Christian North to say, okay, have we been mistaking this man for something other than what he really is? But I think it's a black, and he also has consistently associated with the Southeast in ways that most people of his generation and some don't. However, there's a feeling in the Southeast that they have supported him consistently for many years, and he hasn't requited the love. He still wants to be. So I have sensed a lot of resentment against him in the South, and I've seen cautious embrace in the Christian North as a result of what he did, the retrieval of the statement he made in condemning Deborah's murder. But so here's his path of victory. The best would have been for him to team up with Peter Obi. However, it's done. But I know, of course, as an older person who was once a vice president, he would not agree to be a vice president. He would have wanted Obi to be a vice president.
Constitution does not allow it.
Exactly. So someone challenged me when I said the Constitution doesn't allow it. Someone said no, that's not true. So you are the expert. You are a lawyer and you are a political scientist. So I'm glad you have come to my aid. But so that's not going to happen. And in view of the fact that Obi would not, given the excitement he has generated all over the country, he would think that donating all that to Atiku without an assurance that he would succeed Atiku it was risky. So that's not going to happen. But to win, he has to get votes of the entire North, including the Christian North, and he has to get votes from the Southeast. And surprisingly, he won Osun State, which means he's competitive in the Southwest in ways that people don't really realize. Maybe because of his wife, Titi, who is from Osun, if I'm not mistaken. I think she's from Osun State. And also the sense that Atiku is liberal. People generally don't see him, they don't associate extremism with him of any kind. And if anything, they associate opportunism with him. So if he's able to instrumentalize that into electoral politics, maybe. But I would say it's going to be a big challenge because
just maybe.
Yeah, the country is so poor now that they are very susceptible to financial manipulation. And then Peter Obi already has a huge, region in his corner, which is the Southeast, and the southern minorities also. That Obi is like the only politician of Igbo expression that I know who does not incite suspicion among southern minorities who used to be part of the eastern region. So that's a change. And to this day, that hasn't changed. He's still seen as someone who represents transcendent politics. He also, surprisingly, is still very popular among northern Christians, though the fact that the opposition toward Tinubu from northern Christian has sort of thawed. It's going to be a challenge because I think Remi Tinubu has been making a lot of overtures to northern Christians, and the strategic appointments that Tinubu has made of northern Christians sort of has eased that hostility, anxiety that they initially had. But the Obi's major challenge had been the Northwest. But I'm hoping that with Kwankwaso as his vice president, that would ease somehow. However, if I were to advise him, I would say the Kwankwaso people are not being exactly helpful because in opposing Atiku, they are attacking some of the like sacred political symbols of the North, like what's his name? Ahmad Bello. So right now, that's the it's not Kwankwaso as
Okay.
or Kwankwaso as a political structure, but his online devotees are calling out Ahmadu Bello, calling all kinds of names. But of course, it was in response to the provocations of Atiku supporters who tried to um, COB and what he represents as opposed to Ahmadu Bello. And so, in responding to that, they played into the hands of these people to say, well, Kano has always opposed Ahmadu Bello anyway. Kano was never pro Ahmadu Bello. They had Aminu Kano. Aminu Kano did not agree with Ahmadu Bello.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And so Kano did not always swim with the political mainstream in the North. And therefore, what's happening now is not unusual.
Yeah.
Always, so Ahmadu Bello for people in Kano is no symbol of Northern power. But when you do when you make that kind of argument, you are excluding and alienating the vast section of the North. And what Ubi needs to win is not just Kano, is the entire North, not just Northwest, also Northeast and some parts of North Central. So I would say that the messaging should change. They set a trap for them and they fell into it. They need to fall out of that trap. They need to get out of that trap to say Ahmadu Bello is not the enemy. What he represents is not the enemy. And the old rivalries between Aminu Kano and Ahmadu Bello are just old rivalries. That's what they are. They are not relevant to contemporary times, and that they shouldn't be part of this argument. So, don't be
Yeah.
too provincial. Don't that narrative of Kano against the rest of the North should not, be used. So I would say, if I'm
Yeah.
advising, I would say, get out of that.
Okay.
So
Let me just end with this question, which I really know you. Sorry, are you saying something? Let me allow you to
no, no,
land,
no,
please,
no, I'm done. I'm
before
done.
I take my.
Yeah.
No, there's. I just wanted to bring Dr. Dati Baba Ahmed, who was Obi's running mate,
Yes.
and I know some people, I think, unfairly critiqued him and said he didn't bring much vote, but I thought he brought something unique. That first his, the likability then he brought in terms of when you pay him with OB, the idea of preaching reform, people who are not going to steal from the system, you know, people who are successful as individuals. Dr. Dati Ahmed has built 2 universities,
Yes.
has very, very, so that sense of accomplishment and that he had no baggages. I
Mm.
think that, in my own opinion, it helped to present the bill of 2023 as, many people like the Yusuf, Aisha Yusuf, those activists who immediately warmed up to him because, this is a guy who people know, he didn't really stay money in Anambra State. And I don't know about his vision, but I know as a person, that simple lifestyle is what he chooses to live. And that resonates with many people. And you see Baba Ahmed, two of them staying together. You see this picture of two people who you can say are outside the system. They are inside but outside the system. Now you have gone to an alliance, picking a running mate because you want to break into the heart of the corners, and then you choose Kokonso. It may or may not work because what it, in my own opinion, it may have done is that this picture of reform as somebody who can be relied upon, people who will trust. You see, Dati Ahmed is not a typical politician. He has a university, he talks bluntly. And then this is Obi who is hardly criticizing anybody, hardly taking offense in public, very rich and living simply. How does that image that help to propel the Obi persona? How do you think this alliance? Yes, if he gains Kwakwanso, that he has to gain some those you call the hardliners, if that was the aim. But what do you think he will lose by looking at the Obi persona of 2023, who was with Dati Ahmed, who was, he may not have that kind of clout in the political club, but who appeals to young by his looks, by his accomplishments.
Mm.
And now this is the P2B 64 with a man who is soon 70, been a politician most of his life and not really created anything. Not to bring him down, but
Mm.
it's much more difficult for him now to come in as a reformer. So how will
Yeah,
you think, what do you think of
yeah,
what do you think he has gained from that alliance and he has lost by abandoning the kind of alliance he had with Dr. Dati Ahmed?
I okay, well, I see where you're coming from, and you've made it's very insightful. Dati Ahmed represents newness, he represents youth, boldness, innovation, entrepreneurial spirit to establish it. I actually visited Bayes University when I went to Nigeria recently, and I was impressed by the beauty, the facility,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I saw
quality of
your photo with my
care.
friend Denny, the vice chancellor.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I
Yeah,
was
so
impressed.
he's my friend.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
Yes,
Okay.
I actually had him here before you. Denny, yeah.
Oh, on this program. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, I
So I
had him.
think,
Was my. Uh,
yeah. So yeah, I see that. I see the loss in not having that Ahmed or someone like him, but I also see the gain in Kwankwaso because I think Obi's calculation is probably that you need to be in power first before you can do any reform. If there's a person who quickens the pace in the path of power, why not bring him on? Kwankwaso also has something about him. In Kano, he has charisma. He's almost like the reincarnation of Aminu Kano, except that in his own case, his popularity is he intentionally built it. And how did he do it? He sponsored a lot of young people to study abroad. Uh, People from the major criteria to be sponsored is brilliance. If you're smart, you are intelligent, you are promising, you got access to scholarships that will send you abroad. And most of these people come, and he appears to know the people who are going to build something around, who are going to
mm,
generate. Yeah, and so a lot of them come back and they have a lot of allegiance to him. So he
okay.
and there are people, there are children from poor backgrounds who are sponsored to go get a PhD in the United States, and they come back and practice. Medical doctors, academics, biochemists, all kinds of fields. That's how he built his own base.
Mm,
One of the ways, there are many ways
okay.
that he did. So I think in a way, when you dig beyond the surface of Kwankwaso as the politician and Kwankwaso as the person who generates this kind of enthusiasm amongst the middle class, the educated middle class in Kano. And that's what people don't realize, that what sustains his momentum in Kano is not so much everyday folks. It is these highly educated, foreign trained intellectuals who organize on his behalf. So when you look at that aspect of his personality, someone who is personally invested in education, education is number one reason why he has this enthusiasm. That sort of squares with Obi's own image as a reformer, as a young, charismatic, whatever person. So beyond the surface of uh, Kwankwaso as a politician, former minister, former governor, is a person who is also very reform-minded, who is really invested
Okay.
in education in ways that no northern politician I know is known to take. Of course, you say it's government's money, and I agree, but A lot of people also have government money, but they don't sponsor anyone to go to school. So that image of him is not inconsistent with the image of Obi and even
Okay.
of Dati Ahmed. Dati Ahmed also, his image is of a reform-minded person who is so invested in education that he has 2 universities. But he this one hasn't established he established a university with state resources, but that's not the major draw for him. It is the hundreds, thousands of people that he has sponsored in the United States, in UK, in India, in Malaysia. There are many, and I have many of them as friends. And they are
Okay.
really, they are battering rams to go to war, to fight you, to establish, to defend this guy. Because they say, this guy sent me to the United
Okay.
States to get a master's and PhD. He didn't even know who my parents were. He had no clue who I was. All that mattered was that I was qualified, I was educated, I was promising. He saw that, and that was it. And he sent me. So we have this core of people who are like that in Kano. The people online who are battering and fighting people are the people that he produced like that. So that aspect of his personality doesn't seem to be known in the South, but it's a core part of his identity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now, that's very interesting to know. Prof,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you very, very much. This program normally should last for 40 minutes. I've stretched you and taken more than extra 20, 30 minutes.
It was a joy.
Thank
It
you
was a
very
joy.
much for the time
Yeah.
you've given us, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, the only thing is that when you came to Abuja, you didn't come to see us, but
I'm
that's
so
okay. We
sorry.
forgave you because we should have forced you to give us RAM.
Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Well,
At least you caught.
I
Thank you.
actually I actually did my sala in Lagos with my younger brother, who is a police officer there. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy.
Yeah, thank you, Prof.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.